ways. I know how they feel. They're great. They're loyal. They want to bang for their buck.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 47 of the LarschCast. On today's episode, we have TSN's James Duthie joining us, the LarschCasters TJ, Nav, Gulu, and Sat. We'll be discussing Black Lives Matters in hockey and some other topics. Let's go.
Hold up. Hold up. Hold up. Hope you're ready for the next episode. Hey.
All right, welcome everybody to episode 47 of the LarschCast. My name is Tej Dhaliwal. I'll be your host for today, and I'm joined by my co-host Sat Oberoi, producer Gulu Nanda, and regular LarschCaster Nav Dosanjh. And our very special guest for today is none other than James Duthie of TSN. How are you doing, James? Welcome to the show.
This is like a much better looking, better facial hair edition of Insider Trading.
Yeah, a little bit.
Are you telling us you weren't able to grow a quarantine beard or what?
I had it going. I don't know if you guys caught it. I know not a lot of people were necessarily clicking online to watch the quiz and Insider Trading in the midst of the pandemic, but I had it going for about, I'd say, a month, sort of through mid-April. And then I just decided I have like Sidney Crosby rookie year first round facial hair where
patchy. It's just everywhere, right?
Patchy, and it wasn't a good look. My wife liked it, but my bosses weren't big.
And your wife's not the boss?
Oh.
No, yeah, good point.
You know what, James? We're Canuck fans. We've been growing for about 5 years, so it's our playoff beard.
I was gonna do it that way, where I said I was gonna do a reverse playoff beard, where I'd keep growing it until we actually saw playoff hockey again. But then I thought there was if they don't get this off the floor in the summer, that it might be till next July or June or something like that, and I don't think my face would look so good then.
Have you seen local media Harman Dayal? Have you seen his beard?
No.
Oh my God, it's as
as
scruffy as it comes. He's a young kid, but he was on an Instagram live with Dan Murphy, and it was a monstrosity. But
his is growing out sideways a bit. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's his birthday today, so happy birthday!
It is happy birthday,
to Harman.
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
I would say you guys all got pretty good facial hair.
There you go.
Well done.
So, we do want to, we brought you on to talk about specifically, the issue of the day in the world, and racism, in particular hockey culture, because that's your background.
Mm-hmm.
But with everything going on, we just want to give our heartfelt condolences to the family of George Floyd and everybody in America that is suffering due to these racial injustices, and around the world that suffers racial injustices. It's very important that we have these conversations and we continue to move the ball forward. In particular with hockey culture, and I saw your interview today with Evander Kane and Akeem Alou. I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that hockey culture had this issue with racism?
Oh, that's a great question. And I don't know. First of all, I want to say that I don't pretend to be an expert on this subject. And, it's funny, Evander talked today about uncomfortable, and it's important talking about uncomfortable things. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to come on with you guys, because I agree with that 100%, is that we have to have these conversations, but I don't pretend to have answers. I don't pretend to be able to relate. I am the poster boy for, growing up a suburban Ottawa, white privilege, right? And although it's funny, when my upbringing was, I lived in, as I said, this little suburb called Blackburn Hamlet, and all my best buddies, like a bunch of you guys here, it was like a Benetton ad. I don't know, Benetton probably doesn't exist for you guys anymore, but there was one Korean guy, one Sri Lankan guy, two Jamaican guys, one Chinese guy, one Egyptian guy, and 3 white guys. And so, that was my best friend group. We still do a Zoom chat every second Friday night. And so we never even I guess we never thought of these things. We were all sort of growing up middle class in Ottawa. This is a long-winded way of getting to your question. I think that it's popped into my mind for years. When you say, does hockey have a racism problem? I think that in the same ways that all society does. Hockey maybe, as far as sports goes, more prominent because it's a whiter sport. in general. But I think it reflects everything else that's going on in society. If you ask me is there a racism problem in blank? The answer probably always is yes, right? It's just the severity of the problem. Certainly what Akeem did in November, I think was really important in bringing it to the forefront. I have tons of respect for anybody who speaks out. What Evander Kane has been saying this for 2 or 3 years now. And I think the most important thing, guys, is that people listen. Even if they don't agree, that people listen. You know, we posted that interview I did today, and right away you get some reactions from people going, I'm not listening to these two guys. You know, Evander Kane and Akeem is trying to ruin hockey, and Evander is a guy who posted a thing with, you know, a rap thing with a big wad of money. And that's just so missing the point.
Exactly.
Yeah, just like sit and listen to what they have to say. You don't have to love these guys. I don't know if Akeem Alou would have been an NHL player. I don't know if racism stopped him from a 10-year career in the NHL. We'll never know that. I don't know, but I know that the things he's saying now are worth listening to. So that's what I would want for people more than anything else, is to, you know, to just open your ears and listen. And I think we could all benefit from that. Sorry, that was about a 4-minute answer to where
Well, it was a great-
did
No,
you think
that's
was the
fine.
problem with racism in hockey?
No, we really appreciate that answer too. And I mean, a follow up to that is like, you know, when Akeem spoke and you know, he revealed what happened to him, and you know, we've heard different incidences like John Van Beesbroek with Trevor Daley, and like,
right.
My question to you is, why do you think it's so difficult for NHL players to speak out about racism, and why does it take an event like that occurred
I think
that everybody saw on live?
Yeah. No, I think I will say that's, I think one of the issues with hockey culture in general is the fact that players are taught to keep things in the room, maybe more than most sports. And the personality of hockey players, maybe because many of them are Canadian, is to be reserved, that everything's team and don't speak out. It's the same reason we have a lot of boring intermission interviews, right? Because no one wants to be outspoken. And sometimes when guys are outspoken and show a lot of personality, they get shot down.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that has bothered me about hockey. Media is part of the
That's
problem.
the first one that jumps to mind there. I mean, Evander Kane as well. But
Yeah, for sure. And media is part of that problem, right? We ask for guys to have character, to show color, and sometimes when they do, right away there's criticism and there's columns written about them. So that's certainly a problem with our game. So I would say that that's it to an extent, is that guys don't want to speak out. They're very conservative. I think hockey players in general, and I'm speaking in incredible stereotypes and generalities, are conservative guys. And so there's hesitation there to speak out. I think we've made progress this week to see stars of the game like Jonathan Toews and Blake Wheeler and Steven Stamkos make statements like that. I also think sometimes, guys, I don't want players, people in general, to be judged if they don't make a statement. And I know you're probably going to bring up like Sidney Crosby or Connor McDavid. I've battled with the same stuff myself. I've sat down to type out a tweet, and sometimes I feel like, you know, what does it mean coming from me? Like I said earlier, I have no way to relate to what an Akeem Alou has gone through in his life, or an Evander Kane or a Wayne Simmons or any of those guys, or Trevor Daley. So, and sometimes social media messages get lost, and it's almost like when there's a mass shooting or something and everybody tweets out thoughts and prayers, right? And the best intentions are involved there, but what does it mean? It's almost kind of a hollow thing. You say your little message and then you go on with life. And so I think sometimes you got to judge people by their actions more than that, more than like, I couldn't think of the right words, and maybe that's wrong. Maybe that's my fault for not tweeting one of these messages, but I just felt like everything I said was not eloquent enough. So I prefer to retweet somebody like Masai Ujiri or Trevor Noah, somebody who says something more eloquently than I could put it, and hopefully can just judge myself by my actions in what I do, and trying to understand and trying to learn and things like that. So I don't know that we should, I don't like a culture that condemns guys for not making statements either. It doesn't mean they're racist. It doesn't mean they necessarily agree with the cause. I know it's important to hear as many voices as possible, but I think it's hard for a lot of these guys because, and sometimes you get jumped on. Like a few guys were, Logan Couture made, I thought was a wonderfully profound statement, and still people get on him. Yeah. And so it's a difficult position to be put in. I do think people should be more vocal, but I wouldn't judge people just because they don't make a tweet or an Instagram post.
Well, you know,
I
James.
Sorry, I got a follow up there.
What's that?
I understand where you're coming from, James, and what you're saying there, but don't you think that people of prominence have a sense of responsibility to the public to be like even put themselves in positions that they're not really comfortable in? Because fortunate or unfortunate, they're in those positions, and people do look up to them for various things, right? And
No, you're right, Sat.
This is definitely one of those times.
And maybe that will change, and maybe something like this makes that happen. And like you say, this has been going through my mind for the last week now. What is my responsibility as to what I should say and what should I do? And I think some of the players I mentioned, everyone's going through that. It's almost the old Michael Jordan debate, right? Where, Jordan was the greatest athlete on the planet for 20 years, but was condemned for not saying anything politically ever at times where he could have made a difference. Jesse Helms in that election when the other candidate's escaping me right now, but an endorsement from Michael Jordan would have ended who was a clearly racist politician in North Carolina, and he didn't do anything about it. So I think these are things everybody should wrestle with, and you're right in saying that there is responsibility. I think I'd like to see athletes speaking out more. I hate the whole stick to sports thing that you get sometimes on social media. But like I said, I think we've made some progress in the last few days where you have guys that maybe haven't made a statement like this, a Stamkos or a Taves before speaking out. So hopefully we'll get there.
Sorry, TJ, one thing I want to just point out, guys, it's like this whole thing, there is fear there though. Look what happened to, not in hockey, but in the NFL, Colin Kaepernick. I mean, he made a statement, and not only was the media on him after that, there was majority of Americans and Canadians, just football fans, to tell him to just shut up. So
I think you probably have guys, sorry guys, I think you probably, you have agents and people saying, okay, it's a contract year. Don't do anything that's going to risk. And it bothers me that might happen, but I think that's probably a possibility in certain cases, right?
I mean, teams have entire PR departments that train players on how to address certain questions, certain issues. And I think the onus is on the teams. If they have a function set up to teach these players how to respond to the public, they should also be educated on how to respond when these type of issues arise, And I think that perhaps going into the future that this will happen. I mean, but if you take a look at the NHL teams, it took forever to come up with a statement. They're not moving quick enough. They're not using their platforms quick enough to, support Black Lives Matter. So I think that there still is that underlying, I don't know if it's a fear or if there's a profit motive behind it. I don't know what it is exactly, but they're not raising the bar when it comes to addressing these social injustice issues. And that's what we have to see. And it starts with people like James, right? Just coming on and talking about these things. And then maybe it moves up the food chain.
I also want to add to that, there is a huge impact that comes from, people of prominence raising the bar and speaking up. It's the influence on the younger generations. These kids growing up, what they are exposed to is how they're going to grow and mature and live their lives. We've seen that with kids that are taught racism by their families, and exposed to it at a young age, and it becomes ingrained in their DNA. My question, coming off of that, is: do you think addressing racism in hockey would be better served in a top-down or a bottom-up approach?
I would say, can you do both at the same time? I don't think there's I mean, bottom up in many ways. If the masses of players speaking out, usually that's what leads to change at the top most of the times in society, right? If there's a mass volume of people that feel some way or speak out, that's the only way to influence the decision makers. But that doesn't mean that Gary Bettman or Bill Daly or the owners and the board of governors of the National Hockey League or in junior leagues can't do some of these things on their own. They don't have to wait for that push. I mean, look, at the NHL certainly made progress on these things, but I know it's too slow. And I could say that through all sports. You were talking about those tweets today. I know a lot of people, when the Washington Redskins tweet out some sort of support and people are saying hello with your team name.
Well, so on that note, I want to ask you this question. Like, do
Yeah.
you think should teams like the Chicago Blackhawks, the Washington Redskins, the Cleveland Indians change their name or logo to adapt to modern times and to get with the times, you know?
Yes, I do. And I haven't gone as far to, not mention those names or, in protest. Maybe I'm not strong enough to do those things. I will say this. I mean, there is a caveat. I believe it was in Edmonton with the Eskimos that they actually asked some of the indigenous communities, and they said they preferred they did not change the name. If I have this wrong, but this is what my belief of reading something a couple of years ago. So, if in a particular situation, I do think you need to talk to the communities affected, and if they want change, and I think in the case of the Redskins, there has been enough protests that should be changed. But I think it's uncomfortable. I love the Blackhawks jersey and the Blackhawks logo, and again, I growing up, that was my team actually, and you never think about these things. You don't think about the origins of the names, but I can't sit here and say they shouldn't change their names. I just if my policy would always be, if it offends, if there's a bunch of kids who are saying, why is this team named Redskins, people of Native descent, then that's enough for me to say that it shouldn't be there. But I understand that there's unfortunately tons of money and all those things at stake, which has made progress on these things really slow.
It can definitely get tricky when it comes to the financial.
Do you guys think those names should be changed?
I think it's time.
I think it's time too.
Yeah.
It's
The Redskins especially. I mean,
Redskins is the most offensive.
That's an easy one. Like, I know there's a big push a couple of years ago, and people always brought up, financial this, financial that, but like I would think it the other way around. If they changed their name, there'd be a total influx of money. So I think it's beyond that even, right? It's kind of like just being stubborn for no other reason than being stubborn, right?
And the fact that it's, a lot of sports teams are still run by, an older generation of white males, right?
Yep. It's a similar demographic.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate what you had mentioned earlier, James. The stakeholder engagement, making sure that you're engaging with the right communities, and all those teams should actually go through that process where they're engaging with the communities and seeing how they can address the issues in those communities. I mean, they can go and change the name, but that doesn't mean that they forget about their histories as a team, right? Right? I mean, it'd be a great way to sort of build that bridge. Hey, we're going to change our name, but we're going to actually support your community now too. How can we come into your community and build that bridge between what we were and where we want to be, right? So
100%.
Again, like we were talking about earlier, though, at the end of the day, they're owned by a certain, like the old school, thinking it's about money. And if you look at the Redskins, actually, shocking enough, they're one of the most powerful teams in the world, which I didn't realize they were. Like they're on the level of the Dallas Cowboys of how much money they bring in. So if you have 50% of the fans that think, okay, let's change the name, you probably also have 50% of the fans that think, no, this is our history, don't change the name. So who are you catering to, right? So I can understand.
Well, I think they actually probably have more than that. There's probably 75% that don't want to change the name, but that doesn't make it.
It doesn't make it right, no. But then the thing
is, at some point in time, you have to have an owner that stands up and says, this is the right decision to make.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's the uncomfortable decision to make, but it's the right decision to make. And that's essentially like the whole discussion is we need to approach this uncomfortable nature and make it comfortable and, make it right. And we owe it to the minority communities, the Black communities, and all communities that suffer. And, I wanted to, go back to the Eskimos thing. It's interesting, like there is an importance to have that conversation, because if people are empowered by the name, that's a whole separate argument. Right. If Eskimos and indigenous communities want to celebrate their heritage in that regard, maybe that conversation needs to happen on a public forum and a public platform, and then that end result can be, diligently applied. But when it comes to like the Redskins, we know that name that didn't come from any type of celebration, and so that's kind of a more obvious change to make. But from going off of that back to the NHL here, what are some changes that you have noticed already being made, if anything, in terms of
in regards to racism,
in regards to changing the culture and accept, and becoming more inclusive and accept
allowing all cultures, every color to play? Or
I think, guys, a lot of the change is just organic with the new generation. I think the younger players coming in, very much like what I said about my upbringing, where we didn't see color. I have 3 kids, and I don't think they see color whatsoever, because they're, they've grown up with soccer teams with 10 different cultures on the team, and classrooms that way. And so I just think your generation in general is different from previous generations. And so organically, you don't have, I haven't met, I know they've existed, but I haven't met like a racist hockey player myself. I'm sure there are guys in there that have those beliefs that, but I haven't seen it. And I just think that the generation that exists today is just, those thoughts don't enter their mind nearly as much. And so, obviously it's still an issue. And we were talking in our discussion with Akeem and Evander today. Miles Douglas is a Toronto hockey player. Another piece TSN did is still in minor hockey, who said he faced racism throughout his year. So obviously it's still an issue, but I remain hopeful, and I think I'm probably more positive than I should be. But I kind of think that the goodness of humanity wins out in the long run. And I really do think your generation doesn't have, with each passing generation, we don't have some of those old issues. Again, that might be naive on my part. I've been accused of being naive before, but I think that's a big part of it, is that the young players in today's game will help erode some of those things. Obviously, again, it's not completely gone, but I think we're going to see progress that way, just because of the people involved.
I think, like James said, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some generations because I think at the end of the day, it comes to parenting. It comes to what you see your parents do, what your parents teach you, the values you give your kids. And that's across the board, whether you're a professional athlete or you're not, right? You can be working in a factory, you can be working whatever job. It's the lessons you give your children. I think it's going to take a few generations for perhaps this to actually work properly.
My dad was an RCMP officer who worked his way up to assistant commissioner, and one of his roles, I was a young kid at the time, but he was one of the guys who fought for Sikhs being able to wear turbans in the force, which was a controversial issue for a long time. So again, when I have an upbringing like that, where my father was fighting for those type of things, then
you get it.
You get it. You get it inherently, because that's what your household is every day, right? And you just learn not to see color.
James, what was your dad's name?
His name was James. I'm sadly, it sounds so colonial, but I'm James Forbes the Sixth. Very Scottish. And when we had my son, my firstborn was a son, my wife said, the insanity stops here. There's
really you ended the tradition.
I ended the tradition.
So your wife is the boss. There you go.
Yeah, she rules for sure. There is a Forbes in there, but he didn't get the James. There was going to be no more juniors.
Going to make a slight transition, and we are going to talk about hockey here in the second half of the show. Given the landscape of America right now, have you heard anything on the executive side of things when it comes to the 10 possible hub cities? Are they now preparing to cater more to maybe going to Canada because of what's happening in America? What have you heard on that regard?
We intentionally, first of all, I don't pretend to be an insider. I let Bob and Dregs and Pierre do that as much as possible. And we actually did not do insider trading today intentionally because of Blackout Tuesday. We just didn't feel it was appropriate. I just did the interview with Akeem and Evander. So I didn't get the latest from those guys. I have not heard that, but I think that makes a lot of sense. This thing is swinging back and forth every week, where last week it seemed to be when Bill Daly said to me, well, look, if the government doesn't change the rule in Canada where there's a mandatory 14-day quarantine, that's going to be a major problem for having a hub city in Canada. And which made a lot of sense, because I think a lot of politicians or a lot of the public would be upset at the rules being bent for professional hockey players. And then you see what's going on in the States, and you're right, Canada, the contrast between the images from Canada and the States this week are something else. So does the NHL rethink this? I have no inside information, is the bottom line. But usually what makes common sense is what's being talked about at the highest level. So what you guys are seeing here is probably being talked about at the highest level.
You're saying we're the new insiders is what you're talking about.
Yeah, essentially it is.
There you go.
That's
LarschCast insiders.
Better looking, better beards.
Well,
That could be your tagline.
I like Bob's hair though. I like Bob's new hairstyle. I got to tell you that though.
That man's got style.
Does he get it from his
My
son,
wife gave me a haircut. My hair was getting crazy. I have like this really fine hair. And it was like growing up maniacal. So, but my wife did a pretty good job.
It falls down to the same thing though. Nothing changes.
So let's make the full transition to talk about hockey now. Thank you, first of all. Thank you for that discussion.
Thank you.
I know it's very, very difficult, but that's why it's so.
No problem. And like I said, I know sometimes I'm stumped with the questions. I'm like everybody else. I'm trying to figure this out, and it's incredibly complex. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm probably too complex for sportscasters. But like I said, if the one message I would have is just listen to people. And be open to listen and hear other opinions. I watched a documentary called The 13th that I would recommend to everybody on Netflix, which is basically just about the history of racism in America and systematic racism in America and why it's an hour and 50 minutes that really helps you understand a lot of things of what is happening today. And I just think if more people just did little things like that, right? Read other people's opinions and columnists from the media and watch things like that, then you don't necessarily have to change your mind if you have set in your opinions, but just listen.
It's a great way to make the segue now. Now Canucks hockey. We are a Canucks-based podcast, and I have to ask the topic of the day, topic du jour. Cale Makar, Quinn Hughes, who's going to win the Calder Trophy? I want to hear your argument for Cale Makar, and then I want to hear your argument for Quinn Hughes, and then I want to hear your pick.
I think we did this one on the quiz a couple of weeks ago, and I'm trying to think. I think it was 2 for Cale Makar and 1 for Quinn Hughes. I'm trying to think it was Bobby Macropoli that voted for Quinn Hughes. Makar, I would say, from the moment he entered the league, is just one of the most dynamic young players I've ever seen, and it's so rare for a defenseman to come that quickly into the league and just be impactful almost from game one. But Quinn, so if you'd asked me this question, let's say in December, I would have said Cale Makar, and I don't even know what the stats were, but Quinn, like as the season went on, I was more and more dazzled by every little thing, the little things that he did. And you see, I can't win here because if I take Quinn, all your listeners are just going to think I'm pandering to you guys.
No.
They already think we're part of the Canucks organization, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh my God, you have no idea.
Well, I have this rule that when in doubt, you should pander. So I'll say,
you know what? You'd probably help us out if you didn't pander.
I'll say that I feel like Quinn maybe is a little more complete at this stage right now. And so that's not a real detailed explanation, but by the slimmest of margins, when the season ended, I thought he was the more complete player and maybe worthy of the vote. But man, those are,
it's a tough,
I don't remember, and you guys
decision.
probably better than me. I'm terrible with memory. Like I'd be awful at a trivia show, but I can't remember 2 dynamic young defensemen like that coming in the same time in the league in the same year and having that kind of an impact right away.
We wouldn't know. We've never had a defenseman like that, so it's new for us.
Well, I'm pretty sure Quinn's a year younger than him, right?
Yeah.
He was drafted a year later, yeah.
And so I think also a key distinction you made is you talk about he's a more complete player. And he's a bit younger, and he's got more points overall. I think if you add it up, I mean, gotta be Quinn.
I think
I don't know,
honestly,
man. Makar is pretty good. Like,
if I had to pick,
so dynamic, like extremely dynamic, and his wrist shot is just amazing from far out. Yeah.
If I had to pick, I think Kale's going to win. But you know what? Also, I think he kind of gets the credit for that playoffs that he had before this, this previous season. So I think when media watches him, they're like, wow, look what he did, right?
We can't call that Eastern bias, though. We're going to call that Rocky Mountain biase, or what is this?
Yeah. It's hardly a science, too, the way these guys vote. I mean, well, I'm part of the media. I hate, by the way, the term the media because it loops everybody together all the time. It's like if you're watching CNN and people are protesting. I hate, there's great people in the media. There's not so great people in the media. There's excellent reporters. There's not so good reporters. So I hate that in general. But what was the All-Star screw up a few years ago where they had like Ovechkin on the wrong side or something? We're not always great at this thing, is what I'm trying to say. I've watched being at the Stanley Cup final every year, the behind the scenes lobbying that goes on with the Conn Smythe Trophy.
Oh yeah,
really. Tell us about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to watch sometimes where it's a limited number of voters. I can't remember the exact number. Maybe in the 20s, maybe less than that, maybe 18 or 20. Yeah. LeBron is right in the middle of it. But there's always the year that it was Kessel Crosby a few years ago. Mm-hmm. I can just remember, guys having beers after the game and there's lobbying here and there to why it should be Crosby or why it should be Kessel. It's kind of fascinating to watch up close, but
should have been Kessel.
No.
That year should have been Kessel.
Oh, I think you can certainly make that legitimate argument, and I can be accused by people watching of being a Crosby lover, but when you watch Crosby up close on a game-to-game basis, like live in person for I think we were there for the last 2 series or whatever. Just all the little things he does.
That's exactly
so well.
Yeah.
I just think, particularly in that playoffs, he did so many things. He didn't rack up the points, and I'm not arguing. Like Kessler, you could have made a really good argument for, but it's hard to ignore everything, the little things Sid does every single shift.
And you could take that argument back to the year Malkin won instead of Crosby. I mean, people were talking about Crosby was the better 5-on-5 producer, and he all the little things that he did helped him. Malkin just had a really good finals in terms of production, and he took it away from Crosby.
Was it Nav who said? Who was it who said Nav? You said Kessel?
I think he should have been Kessel that year. Just the goals he scored, the impact that line had. I think
that year Calder and the Calder for the same reason.
I do think that the people's general opinion of a player does come into the voting.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can't
of course.
give it to Phil. Lazy old Phil.
Hot dog Phil.
Everybody loves Sid. So I think in a situation like that where it's a 50-50 either way, just like my vote on Quinn Hughes over Cale Makar, people end up going with a guy that they feel more comfortable with winning the Conn Smythe, which is Sidney Crosby over Phil Keller.
And that's just human nature, right? I mean, it's always going to be a bit subjective. So,
but that's like every time we're like the Eastern media. Like, do you blame them? They don't stay up till 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning watching games, so they can only judge which they watch when they're awake.
But if you have I do think you have a responsibility if you have a vote for that. Like that.
Stay up. Yeah.
And I haven't had votes on things for a while. I don't know. I used to. Maybe when we were national rights holders, when we became just a regional rights holder, they took my vote away. I can't remember. But you can't say because you cover the Washington Capitals, if you have a vote on the Calder Trophy or whatever, it's your responsibility to sit up and watch Quinn Hughes, not necessarily every game, but watch 25 games or 30 games of Quinn Hughes.
Enough to make an opinion. So actually, you talked about the rights there, and there's a couple of questions that I have for you. I don't know which one to ask first, but I guess I'll start with this one. In hindsight, are you kind of relieved that TSN is not the rights holder now because what's happening with the other network, and they're losing money.
The money they spent,
and people are losing jobs over that, right? So
I wouldn't say that. First of all, I have a lot of friends over there, and so I want everybody to do well. I know people would like it to be this cutthroat, like the anchorman Ron Burgundy fights with Channel 9 versus whatever Channel 7.
So would you be Ron Burgundy then?
I think I'd be the Ben Stiller Latino network.
Unique New York. Unique.
That's right. But I don't think it really is that way anymore with Sportsnet and TSN. On trade deadline, certainly we want to be better, free agent frenzy, and there's certainly competitive juices still, but I want the business to do well. I don't want people to lose their jobs at Rogers. Nobody does. And so I wouldn't say that. My only answer I could give you there is, first of all, we've done really well. I think a lot of people, when that night happened, said, oh, what's going to happen to TSN? And we do more hockey than we've ever done before with all the Hockey Canada stuff and all the regional. I wish we did, I wish we were seen more in Vancouver. Unfortunately, you don't get to see a lot of what we do because we do Jets regional and Habs regional and Sens regional and Leafs regional, and we don't get to do the Canucks. Maybe that'll change in a few years. So I wish you guys got to see us more, but completely selfishly for myself, it sort of changed my career where I was just doing hockey all the time, and I love that. But now I get to do the Grey Cup and the Super Bowl and the Masters and things that I never would have gotten to do because hockey is all encompassing when you're a national rights holder. So I've really enjoyed that part of it, being able to do different sports. Because when I got into this business, I didn't just want to be a hockey broadcaster. I wanted to do everything. Yeah. And so this has given me a chance to do everything. But that's just completely selfish point of view.
So you want to be the new Brian Williams, I guess, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's right, gentlemen. It's
what time is it? Actually, a follow-up to the last question. And I've talked to a lot of fans of hockey in Canada, and we all kind of the same opinion. Do you think there's an opportunity when the disagreement's up that Rogers and Bell can come together and kind of do a joint bid for hosting, or being the rights holders in Canada?
I don't know. Above my pay grade. I think by the time the national rights come up again, we're only, where are we? It was a 12-year deal. Yeah. I think we're halfway through, right?
Yeah, but I think we're 6 years.
Yeah, I think 2026, I think, or 2025.
Look, by the time, right now the NHL is in negotiations for its American rights deal, which I think is up in a year or so. Yeah. And I would assume, and I think it's a pretty informed assumption, that everybody is in on that. The Facebooks and the Amazons and YouTube, and I think the next rounds of rights deals will involve all these different players. I personally don't think it's a good idea to go to one of these, like a DAZN. I think you still have enough older viewers that you need. I think you need cable television or television involved, the traditional form of television. I know this is the way the world is going with everything online, but I still think you need networks involved in your coverage. But that doesn't mean they have to have all the rights. And I'm a big believer that it should be spread around. I think the NFL, that's one thing the NFL does right, is to keep as many networks involved as possible. Mm-hmm. And I think, selfishly, I work for TSN and I work for Bell. So, but I think it's good to have all the networks involved. And just from if I'm running the marketing of the National Hockey League or whatever league, I want my product on as many different places as possible. Now they have it with us with all our regional coverage, but even nationally, I think that's the best way to do it because it just gets more eyeballs on you. Yeah. It gets more diverse coverage. There's more competition involved in the coverage. And so, that's the way I would, if I was a commissioner, that's what I'd want.
I always look back to the 2010 Olympics and the way that was set up there for broadcasting was great, right? It didn't matter where you tuned in. You got whatever you wanted.
You got sports,
Yeah. So
I think Canadian collaborative effort. It was
absolutely.
Yeah.
So James, just kind of jumping on that last question, sorry, just about your history with TSN, because you've been basically the face of TSN for as far back as now that we can remember, but I may be wrong, but I remember hearing is when you first got the job as a host, did you not get it last second? Was this somebody else that was supposed to be the host and they backed down and then you came on board? I may be wrong, but if you could maybe take
there's a real Vancouver connection to that story. So I was working in your city do you guys remember VTV?
Oh, yeah.
So
Perry Slakowski was there too.
Yeah. Sorry?
Perry Slakowski was on there too, I think.
So I wasn't even a sportscaster. I had worked in Ottawa as a news reporter covering politics and fires and everything for several years. I couldn't get a sports job. And then I switched over to sports in Ottawa, worked there for a couple of years. And for a story that's too long to tell you, I wanted to move. And I have some roots. I'd lived in BC when I was a kid and my dad's from there. So I jumped at a job in Vancouver when VTV started. But when VTV started, they didn't want to do sports. And I couldn't understand that, but they were going to do, if a sports story was big enough, they were going to do it. I thought it was insane, right? It was insane to have a local newscast that had no sports whatsoever. But that's the way, if you went and looked at the early tapes of VTV, there was no sports. And I tried to convince them to do sports, but they weren't interested in doing it, the people running that station at the time. And about 2 weeks in, they said, oh crap, we got to do sports. And that's when they went out and hired Perry Solkowski. And I think Jody Vance, who was doing PR at the time, got hired as well. I can't remember which was first. And I didn't do much sports out in Vancouver, but we had the weather person in Vancouver was a girl named Linda. And she was really good. And then she hosted the morning show, I think, out there afterwards. And so then, long story longer, I end up at TSN. I do some other things. I host CFL, I host NBA, I host Sports Desk for a while, Sports Desk, which became Sports Center. And then we get the national rights back. And I didn't really even apply. I'm not really good at politicizing or anything. I said, oh, that'd be cool to be the host of hockey. But I didn't like call the boss and say, hey, I want to be my name in the running. At that time, I thought I was going to be a football play-by-play guy. That's where my career was going to go. So I didn't even think about it. And Linda was hired to be the host. They had a vision back then of doing it very MTV, where there'd be bands in the studio and all sorts of things happening. And she'd kind of be like a VJ, throwing it over to Bob McKenzie and Dave Hodge, and throwing it over to some rock band. That was the vision. And a couple of days before the season started, they were doing rehearsals, and they realized she really wasn't ready. And she realized she wasn't ready, that she just didn't have, you can't fake it, right? You can't suddenly study hockey like some core, like biology or something in school to pass an exam. You have to have watched games for your life. And Linda was this awesome broadcaster, but she wasn't ready. And to her credit, she said, I'm not ready to do this yet. And so I remember I was on a golf weekend with my buddies, and I got a call from my boss and said, I need to come to your house tonight. It was a Sunday night, and the season started on Tuesday, I think. And I'm like, what? My boss, like, I had a good relationship with him, but he never wants to come to my house, right? Like, so something big must be going on. And came to my house, and we went for a walk, and he said, I want you to host hockey. And I actually hesitated for a while because I wasn't sure that's where I wanted my career to go. And then I came back in my house and sat down with my wife, and, you know, they're asking me to be a national hockey host, and didn't take long. For about half an hour, I kind of slapped myself in the face. Of course,
so what am I thinking?
Yeah. So that's exactly what happened. I was not the choice by any means. I was kind of the last minute replacement that ended up getting the gig.
There you go. Yeah,
that's a good story.
Well, awesome. That's a great story, and I think it worked out fantastic. You know, thinking about where TSN has gone since then, and you know, you've done a fantastic job. How many broadcasting awards have you actually won? You won one recently.
Guys, I don't keep track. 8. No, I only know because somebody asked me that the other day. Canadian Cable TV Awards. I don't think anybody cares about that much.
That's good.
But, no, it worked out. I'm really super lucky that they trusted me to do it way back then. I do remember though, like I walked into something. So I walked in that Monday morning with no idea what was going on, and I sat down in this meeting, and they go, all right, so the first show is tomorrow. We're gonna open with the puppets. And I looked up and said, what? You have puppets? Yeah, we have 2 puppets, and they're gonna open the show tomorrow night. I said, what the hell have I gotten myself into? That's what people remember, the monkey, but I don't think they remember the puppets. We had these 2 puppets that were kind of like Muppets, and they were supposed to commentate on the games and do little comedy bits, and it didn't work whatsoever. There's a lot of embarrassing things if you look back at the early days.
Was that the same person who threw the VTV kind of the idea?
Yeah. So, but like I said, I was very lucky.
I think you should get an award because I've never seen somebody be able to waste time when you're doing those 13-hour shows on the trade deadline day and there's nothing happening. Your skill of just talking about God knows what. I'm like, you go off on a complete tangent.
I got a lot of help. If it was just me, I'd probably be screwed. But the fact that there's 20 commentators in the studio, you can bounce it around pretty good. But those days I have this love-hate relationship with Trade Center and the free agent frenzy. I went through a few years where I really hated it. And not that, you know, I love hockey. I love talking hockey, but I felt so sheepish going on there for 6 hours when I knew that nothing was going to happen, that no trades were going to happen.
It's part of the shtick now, though, isn't it?
It is, and I think it became part of the shtick. Somewhere along the way, maybe 5 years ago, I just accepted it, that this was the way it was going to be. And I think that much of the audience watches the show much like rubbernecking at a car accident, right?
Yep.
Is that you're not watching, you're watching to say how these idiots going to fill this.
That's exactly it. Like we want to see how you drown.
You basically want to see me squirm, don't you?
A little bit, yeah. A little bit.
I love it when you take it to like Mackenzie and Dreger in the back, and they're like, "Yeah, we got nothing." And you're like, "Thanks for your help, guys."
Have you seen that one clip, the Canucks for Kids telethon? They're all just sitting around, and the camera pans to them. It's like, "Oh, let's act busy again." Like,
I can remember one. There was one year where I was running back and forth between two panels, one at the front and one at the back. Yeah. And I'm trying to think of who was on the panel. I shouldn't indict these people.
You totally should. Come on.
I think Barnaby was on back then. Matthew Barnaby. I can't remember the second guy. One of the coaches, like maybe it was like Mike Keenan or somebody, or Mac. It could have been Mac T. But there was a trade, and this is why I value guys like Ray Ferraro is unbelievable. Dave Poulin is unbelievable. Craig Button. Because they know there's a lot, like O-Dog, for instance, one of our guys, he'll tell you he knows like the top 6 forwards on every team and doesn't know anybody beyond that, right? So if a third liner gets traded, he has no idea. But those like the Button and the Ferraros and Poolies, they know everybody right down. They know the minor league players. Yeah. So they're very helpful because often I don't know the guys, right? If it's some minor league deal, I'm looking at these guys saying, who is this? Is he just a throw-in or does he have some value? So anyway, this trade happens. And the producer says, "Okay, back to you, James." And I'm talking on a single camera of me right now. Yeah. But I can see the guys in my periphery, and they're all going like this, like, "Don't come to me because I have no idea who this player is." Right? So, and the producer's going, "Okay, we need to talk about this trade for 2 minutes." And I don't know who it is, some 7th defenseman or somewhere gets traded, and they're literally giving me we don't know who this guy is. So how are we going to do a panel for 2 minutes? So those are the painful moments. But we don't have those men anymore because of those other guys.
One thing I remember is when one thing about Ray Ferraro that I remember is when Hodgson got traded for Cassian, and if you talk to anybody as a Canucks fan, you'd think, "Holy crap, we got the best player alive because he's a rumbling bull." And then that little line, the rumbling bull, stuck with Cassian so long. And then he didn't do anything for the Canucks and got traded again. So it's kind of like maybe Ferraro knew too much.
Well, I think in all those situations, it's no different than the draft when we're making comparables to guys, right? And everybody wants a comparable. And this guy, well, he reminds me of Nick Lidstrom. Well, that's a lot to put on a guy, and so I think if you went back, if somebody for their master's thesis in university went back and evaluated the statements of our analysts or myself on Trade Center about who won trades or was this the right free agent signing, we'd probably be right about 12% of the time.
12%, eh? Okay.
I just quote Bob McKenzie. I'm like, if Bob says it's true, it's probably going to happen.
That's why when we do predictions, I always pick the underdog because no one remembers when you're wrong. But if you're right about something, you can milk that for about 10 years. Right?
That's a good point. That's a really good point. Yeah. All right, James, we just have one last, we have our own version of a quiz for you.
Oh, God.
It's we call it Rapid Larsch. And so, I think we got 11 questions here. You got to answer as fast as you can. Yeah, you got to do your stretches there. Get those stretches in. They're hard-hitting questions here. And, if you have to skip, you can. We don't want you to skip, though. These are not too hard, but answer as fast as you can, all right?
All right.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Who is your favorite TSN panelist?
I got to go Bob, just because he's been on the other side forever with me. So, and he's the conscience of the panel.
All right. Who's got the better inside connections? LeBrun, Dreger, or Mackenzie, or Bob?
Those guys... Honestly, I think that's a 3-way tie. That's a cop-out answer, but
okay.
I mean, Bob's been doing it the longest, but man, Dregs and Pierre work super hard. They're very, very good at what they do, so I can't pick.
A very good answer there. Are you the quiz master?
No. Big misnomer. The quiz master is a guy named Steve Dryden. We kept his identity confidential for a long time. He is never seen on camera. He looks like Larry David. He acts like Larry David. He's annoying as Larry David. He actually exists. He is the evil quiz master. He writes the questions. I just take the blame for it.
Did you just break that here, or that was already?
It's been broken a couple of times before. So it's a BC exclusive.
There you go.
International exclusive.
That's all we care about.
What is the best chirp you've heard from Brian Burke?
You can say whatever you want. This isn't like a PG-13.
He's loved out here. Don't worry, it's all good. You can say whatever you want. I hated it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this isn't a great chirp, but this is the one he calls me yoga dwarf, and which is ridiculous. I'm 5'10". Now people argue that I'm not 5'10". I'm only really 5'10" because I have a big long head. So I'm probably like a 5'9" guy with a big head. So I'm 5'10", but he's 6 feet or whatever. So when we work together, and I was doing yoga when we worked together. And he thought that was hilarious because he's one of these old school guys. It's not in 2020. He's not even in the 2000s yet. So he called me Yoga Dwarf, and he still throws that at me once in a while. But the best chirp ever from him, really, and now I've given away the punchline to the story, but after Berkey got fired, I guess by the Leafs, trade deadline happened. And I was getting these texts. I started getting these texts from a number I didn't recognize. And they were just ripping our coverage. So it was like, I do an interview with some guy, and it was like, that was awful. Get Gino to host. This sucks. And then there'd be like a bunch of Z's like he was sleeping. And I thought it was one of my buddies, and this went on for like 2 hours. Like there was a text every 2 minutes. And finally I'm like, Uncle dude, who is this? And he goes, it's Berkey, do you miss me?
He's looking for a job.
At least you get his wife to
The
call
thing
you.
about Berkey is I do miss doing, now that he works for the other network, I would interview him every trade deadline. He would shoot down every one of my questions, and everybody thought we hated each other. And he'd just give me that Berkey face and just say one-word answers. And then as soon as we get off the air, people are going, holy crap, Berkey hates Duthie. He'd send me a text. He goes, that was great, eh? I'm awesome television, aren't I?
That's awesome. That's great.
Anyway, sorry, that was supposed to be a short
No,
answer.
that's classic.
We like that.
Love it.
Add the
Okay.
stories.
Who wears more makeup, Ray Ferraro or Darren Dreger?
Dreger. But I probably wear more than either one.
Well, that's why I didn't ask about you, because we already know that.
Well, you see, here's the problem. I don't try. What happens is it's a roll of the dice with the makeup artist. So let's say we have 6 different makeup artists at TSN. We share it with CTV News and Lisa LaFlamme and all those people. So you walk into the makeup room, you don't know who you're going to get. And there's about 2 or 3 of them that will just put a little bit of powder on you and you're fine. But then there's a couple that think you're like either a corpse or a mannequin. And for some reason, the time that I go in for makeup, I get there's this one lady, I can't name her name. She's the sweetest lady. But I walk out of there sometimes, I'm like, man, she just painted me. Like she put 4 layers of paint on me. And so I try to avoid, like sometimes I'll walk in and then just walk back out if she's there. But trust me, I do not like makeup. I only put a little bit of powder on. Here's my makeup-free look. But I would say, who was the other option, Dreger or who?
It was Ferraro or Dregs.
Yeah, Ferraro. I don't see Ferraro much. He's in the booth most of the time, but I'd have to go Dreger because he's in studio more.
All right. Who is your current favorite NHL team?
People don't believe me. I'm accused of being an Ottawa Senators fan because I'm from Ottawa. And I would say there was truth in that a few years ago, only because my parents are massive Sens fans. And my dad passed away a couple of years ago, but you want your parents to have good things happen to them. And there wasn't a lot of good things that happened with the Senators. So I don't root for anybody. And that's one thing I think a misnomer with people in the business that think we care. Oh, you're a homer. A lot of the local broadcasters, I'd say, are homers. We do not care. I can tell you that Bob McKenzie does not care. I can tell you that Darren Dreger does not care. We are selfish. We root for cities that have great restaurants and good weather for the Stanley Cup final. I will tell you my favorite Cup final was 2011, and that's not pandering to you guys. I love Vancouver in June. The buzz in that city was just unbelievable. And I always cheer for the Canadian teams because it's just that much more exciting when you're in a Canadian city for a Cup final. But that Cup final, as tragically as it ended for you guys, was 2 of the best weeks I've had in my 30 years in this business. It was such a fascinating final. and the city was just, walking from our hotel to the rink for every game through those crowds was just, I just loved every second of that until the riot.
Oh, yeah. I know, unfortunate end result there, but
yeah.
We'll skip past that. Okay, so next question.
James brought it down here in a real hurry.
Well, it's just when you say riot and then you think about what's going on right now, right? So but anyways, which Canadian team has the best chance to win the cup in the next 5 years?
Almost as long as
Don't say it, James.
This is a Trudeau-like pause right here.
Yeah, the Trudeau pause right there. Yeah.
I would have said Winnipeg until
this last year.
A year ago. That was my pat answer. And look, I'm gonna have to. I would say that it's a halvesies between Vancouver and Toronto.
Hey.
I don't believe. I think there's something. Even though the Flames have had a good year, there's something missing in that mix. And I'm sorry, I probably would have had to say Toronto probably maybe last summer. But I really like what has happened to the Canucks this year. And windows open and shut so fast these days. And with Toronto's cap issues, I think Vancouver's in a bit of better position. But I would say between those two. And I am aware of the Leafs situation. I lived in Vancouver. I know I work in Toronto at TSN, but I can just tell you guys, I fight the good fight for equal representation with the 7 Canadian teams.
Well, we have a follow-up on the Leafs Canucks, don't we there?
Why do you keep losing that fight then, though, James?
Yeah, that's a difficult conversation to have. I mean, look, the Leafs do have a lot of fans across the country, and the ratings dictate that. But it bothers me too. It bothers me when Austin Matthews gets a pimple and it's on the front page of tsn.ca. And so, and I really do. We fight hard to get equal coverage for everything, and definitely on our broadcast. Look, it's different when I'm doing regional games, obviously, but I know when we were national rights holders, we did our damnedest to cover all the teams equally.
So what I think is going to end up happening is that Elias Peterson is going to show the world that what a world-class player he is. And then when that day comes, when he's just one of the best in Oh, no. He's still got more coming. He's going to get
another level or two.
When that day comes, TSN is just going to have to cover it. That's what's going to happen. That's my
We had a follow-up question. Sat, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're being from Ottawa, and you already said you don't have a kind of horse in the race. Mm-hmm. Since the Canucks have come into the league, between the Canucks and the Leafs, who's been a more successful franchise?
Since the Canucks came into the league.
Yeah, in the early 70s.
50 years ago.
50 years.
1970 was the first season.
Yeah.
Well, you'd have to say you go by Stanley Cup Finals. Leafs haven't been to a Stanley Cup final, have they?
No, not since '67.
So that's all I would go on. I just go on success. So I would take the Vancouver Canucks.
Well, thank you. You heard that here. TSN thinks the Canucks is a better franchise.
There you go.
So that's all you're going to put out on this on your tweets, right? Duthie hates Leafs, loves Canucks better.
We're gonna say Yoga Dorf hates Leafs.
Damn media.
We're sending you a Pedersen jersey. We're on the air.
Here's another good one. Will Seattle win the cup before Ottawa?
I really like Ottawa's what Ottawa has right now. And you know the question you asked a couple of minutes ago, it's not a far-fetched thing. If you'd extended it to say a decade, I might have put Ottawa in that equation, with the caveat that, the ownership situation has to either change, or he has to,
that is a big caveat.
He has these words about that he's going to commit and spend the money. I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
I hope that's the case, because they have a real opportunity here, especially if they win the lottery and get Lafreniere and then get the 3rd or 4th pick as well. There's a lot of talent in that organization and in the minors, but you have to spend the money, and he says he will. So the best we can do right now is take him at his word, but
we're going Ottawa on that one.
So I will say Ottawa has a really good opportunity. I'll take Ottawa, but as long as it's not screwed up by ownership.
It's a big caveat for sure. And then we got, so who do you want on the TSN panel or quiz that hasn't been on yet?
Ooh. geez. Okay, people I'm generally fans of that I like to interview. PK Subban would be a great character when he's done playing. I love John Cooper, the coach of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I just think he has stories galore. I'm a big fan of Blake Wheeler and just how outspoken he is. You know, he's one of the first players to speak out on what's happening in the States right now. Those are off the top of my head. I'm probably missing numerous really good guys.
Oh, good answers, though. Good answers.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Torts. I'd love to have Torts back.
We wouldn't.
No, on
our team.
I love that attitude. Oh man. And then which TSN panelist of your or teammate of yours do you think will land an NHL executive job first?
I think McKenzie could have probably. Just out of respect, I think that Bob McKenzie, if he wanted to go that way, had so many contacts in the business and was so well respected that probably he could have. But because I know Bob's not going to do that, and he's sort of heading towards light retirement, that the most obvious answers would be the guys who have the experience, like a Dave Poulin or a Craig Button, who've both done the jobs before, who both follow the game, and who guys that I've seen up front are just, I have just so much respect for those guys. They're good quality people. And I would hire either one of those guys in a heartbeat.
What about Ray?
That's great. I don't think Ray probably would do it either. And that's the only reason I don't mention him. But man, if I would like to have Ray Ferraro in my management.
I'd be so interested to see if he ever got a job, if he'd be different than what he is like on his radio hits here in Vancouver. Like,
I think
it
you
seems
have
like
to an extent, right?
Yeah, a little bit different.
When the man gets a hold of you corporately, I think you're forced to change somewhat that way. But it would, I don't think he'd change having strong opinions. That's the greatest thing about Ray.
That's a
it
great.
wouldn't last very long then.
He's an excellent talent evaluator who just sees the game so well. But I didn't mention him because I just don't think he'd do it. He likes his golf and his summers off, and too much work being in management.
So I got one last. I just throwing this off the top of my head here, but I do want to ask you this question. From your perspective, final question on our LarschCast quiz, the Rapid Larsch. Do you think the overwhelming criticism that Jim Benning gets is fair? Yes or no?
No.
Okay. That's it. Rapid Larsch. You can follow up on that. Go ahead.
No, the only 10 seconds I would add is sometimes I think that maybe early on, but I think the product stands for itself right now, and it's a pretty darn good product that's improving. I think sometimes people are judged. People love Berkey in many ways, or a lot of people did anyway, not because of necessarily evaluating his moves or the teams he built, but because they liked the way he stood up and they liked his presence at a podium and the way he spoke. And I think that maybe that hurt Jim more than it should have. That, okay, Jim's boring and he doesn't speak, eloquently and speak in great 15-second clips. And I think that hurt him certainly in the early years. But so anyway, that's my answer stands.
Well, I think all of us feel the same way here on the LarschCast, and this market and Toronto and a lot of Canadian markets can get crazy. And
Vancouver's a tough market.
It is.
I would say, people talk a lot about Toronto. My years cover, even in news, it was very much like an American market as far as the competitiveness and the cutthroat nature of media out there. I found, even though there's a lot of great people out there, I think Vancouver's one of you can make an argument that Vancouver's a tougher market than Toronto, I think, to be a general manager or coach in.
I mean, that's part of the reason why we started the LarschCast, to be honest. We're bringing a more positive and optimistic approach to the Canucks, because as diehard fans of the team, we felt that, the market was really tough and can sometimes dictate what happens. Like his example is Judd Brackett. He was blown up in a very iconic fashion, and maybe if that didn't happen, he would still be part of the organization. So there's a lot of things that can happen. But I think you hit the nail on the head there, and that comparison, or just stating that Vancouver might be the tougher market between Vancouver and Toronto, it's pretty eye-opening to hear that from you. So, but anyways, James, thank you again for joining us on the LarschCast.
Thank you.
Thanks,
For
James.
opening
Thank
your
you.
heart and having that honest discussion, very important discussion on racism in hockey culture. We're really happy to have sat down with you, and congratulations on winning another broadcasting award. How many was it again?
8.
There you go. Take
I
care.
don't put them on display or anything. I give Drager a hard time because he always has his award right behind him when he's doing insider training. But I will say we did a big hockey a Zoom chat like this with all the hockey guys a few weeks ago, and just for a joke, I brought all of them up and put them behind me, just like the big, really lame flex. No, guys, it was a pleasure. Tej and Nav and Sat and Gulzar. Sorry, what did they say they really call you?
Gulu.
Hello.
So I'll remember that next time. Pleasure coming on, and thanks for having me, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Take care. Have a good night.
All right, guys.